experiences that also I felt was important and being more personal. One of the similitudes that Jeff and I have is we have had the fortune of having a very loving family, and among our loving family, we had very strong relationships with our grandparents. And particularly, we had grandfathers who had a big influence in what we did. So I had a grandfather, he was very young, 56 years old, and he spent a lot of time with us. And he really was able to do two things which have been very meaningful for me. On one side, always try and stimulate curiosity. And the way he would do that was always asking questions of what we'd think. And it's quite rare that children get asked what they think. And in any different situation, if we'd go to a museum or if we'd meet someone, or if he'd always be interested and that stimulation of curiosity. And the second thing is responsibility. Since very young, he really would want us to make choices. And choices could be like, he liked to watch movies, had a very, very short attention span. So if the movie wasn't good, 5 minutes, it was gone. If you go half the way to the movie, that was success. And so we always had to choose the movie he would see. And so going from those small responsibilities to bigger responsibilities, like taking care of something that he thought was important, or a guest that he had. And that trust in us and that sense of responsibility are things that stayed very much with me. And I know you also had incredible grandparents and an incredible grandfather. And what stays as of today from him, from what he taught you?
Well, you're right. This is something we have in common. My mother had me when she was very young. She had just turned 17 years old. She was still in high school in Albuquerque, New Mexico. In fact, they tried to kick her out of high school for being pregnant, and my grandfather said, no, you can't kick her out. It's a public school. She gets to finish high school. So anyways, there she was, pregnant with me in high school and finishing in her whole senior year after I was born. And because she was so young, my grandparents took me every summer so that she could have, some other kind of life for a few months. Not only she was, when you are a very, very young mother, you grow up very fast. And so every summer, from the age of 3 or 4 until I was about 16, I went and spent with my grandparents on their ranch in South Texas. And my grandfather, at that point, so I only knew him as a rancher. He had done a bunch of things in his life, but at that point he was a rancher. And he did, and this is quite common, I think, in rural areas, that people do everything themselves. He did his own veterinary work, he repaired everything. He had this D6 Caterpillar bulldozer that he'd bought for like $5,000 because it was completely broken down. And we spent an entire summer fixing it. And to get the transmission out of the thing, we had to build our own crane. And so he had an incredible resourcefulness to him. He believed he could solve any problem. And I sort of watched him, his veterinary work on the cattle. He would make his own needles. He would get a little piece of wire and heat it up with a blowtorch and pound it flat and then sharpen it and drill a little hole through it. Some of the cattle even survived.
And I remember a very meaningful lesson that he gave you when you were in the car with your grandmother who used to smoke.
Oh yes, that was a very formative moment for me. And I thought I was a very smart little kid. I was very confident. And I'm only at this point maybe 10 years old. And this was, this would have been 1974. And there were a lot of radio commercials on the car radio about how smoking cigarettes kills you. This was 10 years after the U.S. Surgeon General's warning, and it was still there was big campaigns to get people to stop smoking. And one of these radio commercials said, every puff on a cigarette takes 2 minutes off of your life. And my grandmother was a chain smoker. She smoked all day long, and so always when we were in the car, she would have the window down, and she'd be smoking the whole time. And I hated this. I thought it smelled bad, and I didn't like it. And I was listening to these radio commercials, and so I decided I would calculate how many years of her life she had taken off. If every puff is 2 minutes, and I did some estimating, and I stood up in the back of the car, and I proudly announced that she had taken, I don't remember what the number was, let's say 7 years off of her life. And I thought in my 10-year-old brain that they were going to congratulate me for being so clever. And instead, she burst into tears. And I was taken aback, and my grandfather pulled the car over on the side of the road. And he had never said one harsh word to me, by the way. In our entire relationship, he never did say a harsh word to me, by the way. And so he pulled me around. He took me out of the car and took me out to the back side of the car. She's still in the front seat, tears coming down her cheeks. And he said to me, I had no idea what he was going to say. And he said to me, Jeff, one day you'll understand that it's harder to be kind than it is to be clever.
And the reason I think this is a very meaningful lesson is because there's this idea that technology is clever but not kind.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's a choice. Mm-hmm. And technology is just a tool that one can use.
That's right.
And you need to be clever to make technology, but you can be kind in applying it. Yeah. And I do think that for most of all, you should also feel very at ease, not only in being clever, but equally being kind in what you do.
Yeah.
And the demonstration of what you've built and what Amazon is doing, and in similar ways,